Hello and welcome to Derek McGuire's Week 12 coding assignment video. In this week's assignment, we created a Maven project and created JUnit test cases, parameterized tests, and tests. And so started out creating the Maven project, updated the POM to include the dependencies for the Google Guava, the JUnit 5, and Mockito. And then we created the test demo class. In this class, created the method addPositive, which passed in two integers, checked if they were positive, returned it if so, otherwise threw an illegal argument exception with the message both parameters must be positive. Then created a JUnit test case called test demo JUnit Test, and the first test we did was a parameterized test, which passed a method source, which has the address here, and actually calls this method, which I'll get back to in a second. But this parameterized test was called assert that two positive numbers are added correctly. There were four parameters that included integer a and b, the expected sum of those a and b, and then the expect exception, true or false, if you expect an exception true, or if you expect an exception false. So if you don't expect an exception, you assert that the test demo for addPositive method a and b is equal to the expected outcome. Otherwise, throw the illegal argument exception. And this used the method source here called argument for addPositive, which all these arguments here, you could add as many as you want, but for example, if you add 2 and 4, it should be 6, and false, you do not expect an exception. It also tests for the zeros and the negative numbers here. So you go and run as JUnit Test, and we can see that all those tests pass. That was this one here, and then all 6 of our arguments provided were passing tests. In the next step, we created a regular test that tests the addPositive method. It's called assert that pairs of positive numbers are added correctly. And this syntax, each line tests basically for a new pair of numbers equaling the expected outcome. 4 plus 5 is equal to 9, 7 plus 8 is equal to 15. And so all these passed under the assert that pairs of positive numbers are added correctly. And you can see that here, that passed. And the next step, had to create our own methods in the test demo. I did a return number, so you pass it an integer, it returns an integer, same exact integer. And I did that test, assert that number returned matches. That test came out positive. And then I also did one for cubing a number. You pass in an integer, it multiplies it together 3 times and cubes it, and then returns that number cubed. And assert that number's cubed, 5 becomes 125. Those tests passed as well. And then finally, in the fourth step, we did the mocking of a class. This is assert that number squared is correct. And what happens here is we create a test demo to spy on. That's the Mockito method. Back at the beginning here, added a private instance of a variable called test demo. And then also before each of these tests, we have this method setup, which creates a new test demo called test demo. And also note all the imports here as well, which came from the POM class, but also we import when we're writing these methods. So we do the test demo, mock demo, it spies on the test demo. We do a return of 5 when the mock demo calls getRandomInteger, and that sets up a mock of what the random number would be. Since we don't know what a random number would be, we call it 5. Then the mock demo of the random number squared is actually going to take 5 squared into that method, and we call it an integer here called 5 squared. And then we actually assert that 5 squared is going to equal 25. And so I guess you could have called this num squared here, but anyway, I did another one where you take 6, it gets the random number squared, turns it into 6 squared, and that equals 36. As we can see over here, this happened to be a positive test that returned correctly. And so that was this week's test. We had our demos, our methods over here, the random number squared and the getRandomInt for the mock, as you can see here. And that was it for this week. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your week.